So we got a bunch of stuff to talk about today here on the Transformers Slag podcast. We got a slew of listings from JT Prime 17 and the retail computers of retail itself. And we got a whole bunch of Transformers Age of the Primes listings for 2026. We also have Studio Series 2026, but we'll talk about that later here on the Transformers Slag podcast. But let's cover this Age of the Prime stuff. We have a lot to cover here and break down and make sense of everything like we always do here on the Transformers Slag podcast. So let's jump right into it. So first up, let's talk about the Deluxe price point, and we're going to start with Deluxe Class Quintus Prime here. Now, this is a character that is the Quintesson-shaped Prime. It's going to be tentacles, it's going to be organic looking, it's going to be kind of weird shaped in that Deluxe price point. And it raises the question of what is this really going to transform into? We could have a pretty good idea of what the alt mode's going to look like, the robot mode. But the alt mode, what is that? You know, something organic based? Is it going to be maybe much more of a plant based kind of transformer? Because like, you know, beasts and all of that kind of stuff is really for, you know, Onyx Prime. Is this being plant based be a backdoor into getting like, let's say, a Beast Machines Botanica in a repaint or a retool or partial or something? So we don't know. It's a very interesting one, but again, Deluxe class, so that one of the smaller primes, but still very cool to finally be getting closer to completing those original 13 members. Next up, we have the Deluxe class Sureshot Targetmaster. This is a guy that, from a listing standpoint, has been bouncing around for quite a few years in Legacy and everything. Kind of got lost in the mix over the past couple of years, but now the last member of the original characters of the Autobot Targetmasters is finally happening with Sureshot. Again, Mark and Evan always talk about completing their micro collections and having those be done at some point. We had, you know, Crosshairs prior to that with Siege, who might need an update in my opinion much later on, but maybe that'll be a trademark thing. And then, of course, we got the Point Blank, and now we have Sureshot here to finally round out the mix. The question is he going to come with his Targetmaster? Point Blank came with his Targetmaster, but will Sureshot come with his? Is the budget there? Are you going to be able to fix that for the Deluxe class price point to, like, mix that up? We will see. We will see. Then we have the Deluxe class Blast Off. No shock with this one. One more limb added to our Bruticus collection of Combaticons. We got Deluxe class Vortex before then with Age of the Primes in 2025. So this is just another listing leading to the completion of that. We'll talk more about it in a moment later because we have another listing here that leads to even more conversation about how this is going to be handled. Then we have the Deluxe class Beast Wars Quickstrike. This one is really cool because originally he was rumored to be in, you know, Kingdom, and he was going to be a core class sized item. But being in this price point, you know, this is great stuff to have the Beast Wars Fuzor character as a Deluxe, and I'm very happy with that. I feel that the core class wouldn't have done him justice. It would have been too tiny, wouldn't have scaled with anything. And this just works great. You know, another great, fantastic Beast Wars character and Beast Wars figure in a generation-styled line in a much bigger price point is better. Because, I mean, even his original toy was the basic scale, which was tiny. So he's someone that was, you know, he was bigger than a Rat Trap or some of the tinier characters. So I love that Quickstrike's getting a modern version. And I'm pretty sure, based on how they've handled the other Beast Wars characters already, they're going to knock it out of the park, and he's going to be cool, and we're going to finally get another Fuzor added to the collection. This one's interesting here. We have a Deluxe class Smokescreen. I think it's interesting because, number one, historically, most of the time with these listings, when they're non-G1 characters or Beast Wars characters, they usually put some kind of title in front of them, unless it's a character that has a name that's very common across Transformers lore. The fact that it doesn't say, like, let's say, Armada Smokescreen, or even like something weird like G2 Smokescreen, pretty much tells me that this is a Generation 1 Smokescreen. Is this a re-release of the Earthrise G1 Smokescreen? You know, and because of that question, it made me kind of like look at the secondary market and see what's happening up with that. And I was like, oh, okay, like, you know, a G1 Earthrise Smokescreen goes for about like $50 today. So it's something where if he's going for about $50 today, you know, and his original MSRP back then was $17.99. Again, reminder, he came out in 2019 when Deluxes were like $18, you know. So I guess it's a way to put out, those popular key characters that end up being expensive in the secondary market and find a way to reissue them again and fill out a wave. So that's what I think is happening with Smokescreen here. It's probably the G1 version in that pre-Big V era, and it gives people an opportunity to complete their Datsun boys another time if they weren't there the first time. And considering that, people had problems with the Prowl, who knows, maybe even the Blue Streak, Silver Streak will find another re-release at some point. Then we have the Deluxe class Powerglide. This one's cool, but no shock, at least from my standing, because that was a trademark that stopped being used by Hasbro in 2016. They refiled it in 2024, and now it just totally makes sense that they're going to be doing it. I mean, all the mini bots up to this point have been getting the Deluxe class treatment at some point, and Powerglide is just one of those key characters that I feel just needed a new toy after all these years, and now they have the trademark back. They're going to be using Powerglide here, and I think that's fantastic. The only question is now he's a Deluxe. Is he going to have an opening chest, and you're going to have a nice heart panel in there like the original Classics version did? We will see, but very, very cool, and I'm pretty sure they'll have fun repainting him in the future. Adding another mini bot to the mix here, we have Deluxe class Swerve, and finally, again, another mini bot Deluxe being turned into that. And this was more just a classic example of a trademark refresh. That was a trademark that was refreshed in 2022 and was literally going to be expiring at the end of 2026. So they have to put out something. And so we're going to get the Deluxe class Swerve here for 2026. Historically, a character that's been tied to Gears in terms of mold and tooling. I always call it a mold tooling brother in a lot of ways, a mold brother. And so I'm just kind of curious, how they're going to go about it with this modern version, since the last modern version that we had of new tooling would have to be the Thrilling 30 version. And that one was pretty fantastic. So I'm very curious to see how they go about it this time around. Are they going to really lean more into screen accuracy? Are they going to look at what IDW is doing? But either way, I think it's fantastic we're getting another Swerve. And again, it keeps that trademark alive, and then they'll refresh it in 2027, and then we'll see something in another 4 years. So very, very cool. Here's a great one for a lot of people. A Deluxe class animated Ratchet, a new addition to our modern interpretations of the animated collection. Now, I'll be honest, the original Eric Siebeneller, Takashi Kuniharo designed figure from back in the day with all his tools and weapons and stuff was a near perfect figure for 2010, especially based off of that Derek Wyatt animation model. But it's been about 15 years now since that figure has come out, and we have a lot of new fans in the fandom now that were not around when Animated had its first run. And I'm sure they'd love to get the character and not have to shell out the $50 that people ask for on eBay to get them complete with all their weapons. So I hope they knock it out of the park like they did with a lot of the other characters. And that if we have a Ratchet, that means we'll probably get an Ironhide at some point. Maybe even we'll get Cybertronian versions, and they'll retool them and figure out a way to do that also, like they did with the original Ratchet. So very cool. I dig those. And again, more animated, always welcome. Going from Transformers Animated, let's talk Transformers Prime. We have the Deluxe class Prime Cliffjumper. I get a feeling this is probably just a repack of the Deluxe that we got from the Target exclusive 4-pack a while back. That's what I believe is going on here. They're just going to take that chase mold that they did before, put it as a Target 4-pack, and now they're just going to take out that individual guy and have him be put as an individual here. I want to believe this is probably one of two things. Either they finally have the contractual ability to sell this individually, or alternatively, there's a trademark that expired for Cliffjumper, and it's one way to keep Cliffjumper in the stratosphere for the next 4 years if they don't have plans for it, by just reissuing this again and putting it as a singular pack and giving people an opportunity who didn't pick up the 4-pack to get this one. That's my take. I mean, are they going to repaint it a little bit, maybe change the paint deco on it just to make it different from the 4-pack so it doesn't give people too much bad vibes for buying the 4-pack version? I don't know, but it is a peculiar one here on the list. And that's it for the Deluxes. Let's get into the Voyager class, and we're going to start already with some weirdness with the Voyager class Amagalmous Prime. This is a guy that's like, what is he going to turn into and what is he going to look like? If the original 13 statues image from the packaging is any indication, he's going to have more of that shockwave kind of whirl look to him. And I think the transformation cog is going to be a big part of his vibe and his ancient accessory. But he's always been a very big enigma character with the original 13, so I'm really curious how they're going to go about him. He's always been the weird one out of all of them visually and historically, so very cool to still finally have him coming up. And I get a feeling he might even be a Wave 1 kind of character too, so very, very cool. Another one here who's interesting is the Voyager class Combaticon Brawl, and now this is a Brawl that is a Voyager class. Now, historically up to this point, all the Scramble City Combiner limbs that we've been getting have been Deluxe class price points. This one's a Voyager. The only thing I could assume is he's still going to be a Deluxe class scaled figure. It's just that he's probably going to come with a ton of extra weapons and accessories that lead to either Bruticus Combiner pieces, maybe a whole bunch of guns for all the other characters or something like that can combine to make bigger guns. There's a lot of different speculation I could have on this, and not to mention, because Bruticus is one of those molds that just has so many repaints, absolutely a ton of repaints, that I could only imagine that some of those tooling for some of those repaints and those other versions of the character might also be found in this box too for future repaints. Not so much for this Bruticus proper, but for, say, the Ruinations and the, Battle Gaias and everything that'll come afterwards. That's what I think. But again, this is the first time we've had one of our limbs at this point be on the Voyager price point, but I think it's more from an accessory nature than it does have to do with size, if anything. Then we got the Voyager class animated Wreck-Gar. Again, much like the Ratchet before it. Fantastic that we're getting one of these characters again after all these years. Originally was a 2010 figure. Again, Eric Siebeneller, Takashi Kuniharo, the original figure back then was pretty much perfect from day one, all those 15 years ago. But again, it's been 15 years, and that figure today runs you between $60 and $70 complete loose. So giving it a chance to revisit that character and do it in the Voyager price point. The original toy was in the Voyager price point, so it kind of works out for the budget too if they could balance it and do it justice. And yeah, very excited for that one for people. Again, how is it going to be better than the original? I don't know. But if they could pull off something and do a little twist on it that's even better, that would be great. The only thing I could take away from it is if they get this animated Wreck-Gar here, will we finally get the repaint afterwards of the Eco Wreck-Gar, that repaint that never happened? Maybe we'll get that one afterwards. So at least you'll get that version if you're like an animated completist and you want to get some of those versions that never happened. So very, very cool. We got the Voyager class. This one's probably the most exciting for me. The Voyager class Armada Sideways. This one is really hype because his original figure was pretty cool for its time, but like a lot of those Armada figures, the sleekness of the animation models and how they were drawn never really matched the more bulkiness of the toyetic aesthetic of the Armada toys from back in 2000, 2001. And we have one of these kind of situations where this was a very sleek, almost ninja-like kind of character with his original animation model, and now we have something that's going to be in the Voyager price point, which I think is a really smart move, because no doubt this figure will be deluxe scaled, but being in the Voyager budget means that you could probably now work in his two Minicon Autobot and Decepticon heads, and that could be budgeted into that. Again, most of those Armada characters lack their Minicons up to this point, and now we could get something where Sideways, I mean, how could you have Sideways without his Minicon faction swapping gimmick? You gotta have that, the head faction swapping, all of that stuff, the little missiles. And so by having it a Voyager, you could still have something that'll scale well with the other characters as a deluxe, but will have all the extra little pieces and gimmicks and the two different heads that transform into little drivers, and then they could combine to make a bigger driver. That's fantastic. Easily the most exciting item for me on this entire list here, that is characters that have already gotten toys. Like a lot of these we've gotten the toys already in some shape or form, but this one here I feel is going to be a big upgrade from what we've gotten before, and that's really exciting. Then we got here the Voyager class Nexus Prime. Now, by him being a Voyager class, this pretty much confirms that we probably won't be getting a mixture of our past modern combiner limbs homaging that fun publication version of that character. So we're not going to get like Age of the Prime's Onslaught mixed with two Superion jet molds and Vortex and Brawl to make a Nexus Prime repainted to look like that fun publication one. I still hope, though, that even though this is a Voyager class, that it has some kind of combining element to him. Because this is Nexus Prime, and that's his thing. It's all about being the combiner Prime and, you know, having the enigma of combination and all that stuff as his key element. So if that statue art is any indication of how he might be, that might steer us in the right direction. But again, it's kind of a shame that they're not going with the original concept of what FunPub did. And it's not like we didn't have the tooling for it. Maybe it'll happen later on. Maybe when they look back at all the molds and stuff that they got through all these combiners, maybe at some point they'll do a true Nexus Prime in his wacky pinks and dark blues in those translucents. But until that comes, this is what we got, Voyager price point. And with that being said, with this listing here, that only leaves us pretty much Liege Maximo is the only Prime up to this point that hasn't had a toy listing reveal. I'm not saying he's not coming. I'm just saying that he's the only one that we haven't seen allocated to a price point just yet. I'm hoping he's a leader class, or maybe even something bigger, since he's always been an important character behind the grand scheme of things in Transformers lore, especially with the Marvel comics. So I'm very curious how they're going to go about it. And speaking of leader classes, let's jump into the leader class now. We got two of them here. First one we got is leader class Universe Razorclaw. This one comes as no surprise. It was only a matter of time when this one was going to happen. You take your Beast Wars Tigerhawk that we got through Legacy, and then you give it the evil black repaint, the big baddie of the Transformers Universe 1.0 line. And this is great because, I mean, up to this point, a complete Razorclaw from that would have ran you easily $100. And now considering that, that Legacy Tigerhawk figure was absolutely amazing, giving him the Razorclaw repaint is going to make it just as amazing, no doubt. And if they even include a little extra accessory or two, or maybe a slight head resculpt to give him a more evil look, I mean, that's fantastic. Even if it's a straight up repaint, they'll still knock it out of the park, in my opinion. But leader class Universe Razorclaw, that's great. And again, that's a very unique time in Transformers history, but one of those characters that definitely we knew was going to happen at some point from a repaint potential. And then we got the big one here, no emphasis on big. We got leader class Big Convoy from Beast Wars Neo. We got our commander class Magmatron, and it was only a matter of time that we would get Big Convoy. His tusk was even teased in the box art for Magmatron back then. And, Magmatron was a commander class because he had all those moving parts and pieces, the three different, dinos that combine. There was a lot going on with him here from a budgetary standpoint that demanded a commander class. But when you look at the original Beast Wars Neo Big Convoy, even when he was brought over as a Western price point through different releases, he was always associated with the Ultra class, which is kind of like a smaller leader class, for anything, from a modern standpoint. So I could see it kind of working as a leader class in this price point. My only problem is the commander class Magmatron towers over the vintage Big Convoy. And it's something where I just hope that they figure out a way to, in the leader class price point, make a Big Convoy figure that'll at least be able to be as big to go face to face with Magmatron and stuff. Because Big Convoy's always been a big buff dude, and it'd be kind of silly for him to be tiny next to the Magmatron here and have his big cannon and stuff. Another thing, too, I want to point out is they also have, with this listing, it's listed as leader class Big Convoy. So does that indeed confirm that Big Convoy is his name for the West and not like Big Prime or something silly? So that'd be really cool if they keep Big Convoy. Another thing, too, I also hope that they maintain his opening chest for removable Matrix, because Big Convoy historically was the first transforming Transformer that was able to have a removable Matrix with that opening chest. So kind of to keep that tradition there would be very cool. And that's a figure, man, there's a ton of repaints that are built into that. You got the Bloody Tusks Nemesis Prime, you got Big Blue Convoy, Big Black Convoy, Ultra Mammoth. I mean, I could go on and on. So that one right there, there's plenty of repaints you could get just out of that one mold. So that's a mold that they put together, but will definitely pay off in the long term over the next 5 years or so, just in repaints if they do one every year. And lastly, we have a commander class with the commander class Onslaught. Again, No surprise, it's our Commander class Onslaught centerpiece for the Bruticus Combiner. No doubt continuing that skeleton combiner trend that started with the Menasor and later on with the Superion. I did a whole segment talking about it, so go check that out if you want to go deeper into what's going on with Commander class Onslaught and our next big combiner team. And the one other thing I want to cover here too is we also have a Hasbro Generation Selects item that falls under the Age of the Primes here. We have a Generation Selects Age of the Primes 2-pack of G2 Swoop and G2 Sludge of the Dinobots. Now, this is no big surprise because when we got those leader class Dinobots, it was only a matter of time that they would use that tooling and engineering for a big price point to lean into the G2 characters. Although, the funny thing is that, these are two G2 Dinobots that historically have never had the true G2 repaints. And it's an interesting twist to do them as a 2-pack here because, again, they have box art that exists out there that was shown at BotCon back in the day of them being G2 colors, but they never physically had a product. So this is the first time that these two characters from their G2 colors will be done officially in the Transformer world. So expect like a very hot green Swoop and a deep orange, Sludge in the future. So that's very, very cool that that's going to be happening. And just to cover it up. So like we have a G2 Grimlock that's coming. We have the concept colors one that we got from Toxitron collection, which I call the Agumon Grimlock. And then, of course, all that's missing right now is G2 Slag, aka Slug, and Snarl. Now, the question is are they going to go with the greens or the maroons? Who knows? I mean, me personally, I think Slag should be the green and Snarl should be the maroon. But that's just my call. But then again, what do I know about Transformers named Slag? So anyways. But that's it more or less for the 2026 listings of Age of the Primes. There's obviously going to be probably a little more of this and that throughout the years. But then again, thanks again to JT Prime 17 for these listings. And we're not done yet because we still have Studio Series to talk about. And we'll get to that for you guys ASAP and break those down for you and make sense of everything. But again, thank you again for listening to the Transformer Slag podcast and keeping you educated, entertained, and informed in our beautiful Transformer hobby. Keep posted, be subscribed as always, and I'll talk to you in the near future.